Hello friends, welcome back to our YouTube channel Aminia Dental Tutorials. Today we are going to learn about methods of strengthening of porcelain. This is the topic we are going to learn now. This methods of strengthening of porcelain, it is done by following methods. First is interruption of residual compressive stresses into the surface of material. Residual compressive stresses introduction. And the other one is interruption of crack propagation through the material. Interruption of crack propagation. Methods of strengthening of porcelain is done by two methods: residual compressive stresses introduction, interruption of crack propagation. Let us discuss about this one by one. Introduction of residual compressive stresses. Some of the techniques for introduction of residual compressive stresses into the surface of material are ion exchange method, another one is thermal tempering, and the next one is thermal expansion coefficient mismatch. Thermal expansion coefficient mismatch. Ion exchange method. An exchange method is also known as chemical tempering method. Chemical tempering method. Introduction of residual compressive stresses is done by ion exchange method, thermal tempering method, and thermal expansion coefficient mismatch. Let us discuss about these methods one by one. Ion exchange method. In this method, first we are introducing porcelain article. It is immersed in molten potassium nitrate solution. In this molten potassium nitrate solution, we are introducing porcelain article. Porcelain article has been immersed. Porcelain article is immersed in this molten potassium nitrate solution for few minutes. Approximately 20 to 30 minutes we are immersing porcelain article into molten potassium nitrate solution. So let's see what happens. At this time, the sodium ions which is present here and the potassium ions. See, the sodium ion is very small in size and the potassium ion is bigger, approximately 30% bigger than sodium ions. These potassium ions are 30% larger than sodium ions. So, when these both ions get exchange, this potassium ion gets fits here. It is sodium ion is replaced by potassium ion. In this small space, a large potassium ion gets replaced. At that time, this potassium ion gets squeezed into small space. As the this space is small, this potassium ion gets squeezed into this small space. This squeezing results into introduction of residual compressive stresses. Introduction of residual compressive stresses into the surface of material. See what we have learned. The porcelain article gets immersed into this molten potassium nitrate solution for 20 to 30 minutes. As these sodium ions are small, these are exchanged with large potassium ions, which are 30% bigger than sodium ions in size. Area occupied by potassium is more compared to area occupied by sodium ion, because the potassium ions get squeezed into this small space. This squeezing results in introduction of residual compressive stresses into the surface of the material. This is one of the method of introduction of residual compressive stresses. Now let's see another method of introduction of residual compressive stresses. Thermal tempering method. Thermal tempering method. In this method, the ceramic article or the porcelain restoration, when it gets rapidly cooled by placing it in cool water. See, cool water, we are placing either ceramic article or porcelain restoration. Then what happens is, this is the outer layer and here the inner core. This inner core is molten and soft, whereas the outer periphery area, it gets solidified and rigid. The ceramic article or the porcelain restoration is cooled rapidly by placing it in cool water. It is cooled by placing it in cool water. This sudden cooling of ceramic article results in solidification of outer layer only. Solidification of outer layer. Whereas the inner core which is present is soft and molten. This rapid cooling causes contraction. Rapid cooling causes contraction, introducing residual compressive stresses. Let us study this thermal tempering method once again. Ceramic article or the porcelain restoration, when it is placed in cool water, it cools rapidly. This sudden cooling of ceramic article results in solidification of outer layer first. First outer layer gets solidified, which this outer layer is surrounding the inner soft molten core. Inner outer layer gets solidified first, whereas inner core is soft. Inner soft, outer layer solidification. This outer layer surrounds the inner soft layer. This rapid cooling causes contraction. It causes contraction, thus introducing residual compressive stresses. Now, another method of introducing residual compressive stresses is thermal expansion coefficient method. Thermal expansion coefficient mismatch method. Thermal expansion coefficient mismatch. See, when ceramics and metal, when heated and cooled together, the metal gets contracted more than that of ceramics. See, this is the metal, surrounding it is the ceramic. When this ceramic as well as metal, when this both gets heated and cooled together, when ceramic as well as metal gets heated and cooled together, this metal gets contracted more than that of ceramics. When ceramic and metal heated and cooled together, metal gets contracted more than the ceramics. Because of this contraction of metal, because of the contraction of metal, residual compressive stresses are introduced on the outer surface of ceramics. See, metal and ceramics, when these both get heated and cooled together, then metal contracts more than that of ceramics. This results in residual compressive stresses. Residual compressive stresses introduced onto this ceramic surface, outer surface of ceramics. Residual compressive stresses have been introduced. See, now we have learnt about residual compressive stresses introduction. Now we are going to see the second one, that is interruption of crack propagation. Interruption of crack propagation. This is the second method of strengthening of dentar porcelain. We have seen the first method, introduction of residual compressive stresses introduction. Now we are seeing interruption of crack propagation. This is another method of strengthening of dental ceramics, that is to reinforce it with a dispersed face of a different material that is capable of hindering a crack. Actually, dental ceramics, when this gets reinforced with dispersed phase, dental ceramics gets reinforced with dispersed phase, reinforced with dispersed phase. This dispersed phase is capable of hindering a crack. Dental ceramics, when reinforced with dispersed phase, capable of hindering a crack. This dispersed phase, two different types of dispersions used, two different types of dispersions have been used to interrupt crack propagation. These two types, one is dispersion strengthening, and the other one is transformation toughening. Dental ceramics, when reinforced with dispersed phase, they are capable of hindering a crack. With dispersed phase, it is of two types. The interruption of crack propagation occurs in two methods. One is, it occurs in either of two methods. One is dispersion strengthening, other one is transformation toughening. Let us look into these one by one. Dispersion strengthening, actually, these are the tough particles. Dispersed tough particles, these absorb the energy. They absorb the energy. By absorption of energy by the dispersed of particles from the crack. See, if any crack results like this, by absorption of energy by the dispersed of particles from the crack and thus depleting its driving force for propagation. Example for this is alumina core porcelain. Alumina core porcelain contains 90 to 95% of alumina. Dispersion strengthening by absorption of energy by the dispersed of particles from the crack and thus depleting its driving force for propagation. Example, alumina core porcelain contains 90 to 95% alumina. Now let us see about transformation toughening. Here, introduction of partially stabilized zirconia takes place. Partially stabilized zirconia. These absorb the energy. Absorb energy. This transformation toughening is by change of crystal structure under stress. Change of crystal structure. Change of crystal structure. By change of crystal structure under the stress to absorb energy from the crack. Example, introduction of partially stabilized zirconia into ceramics at high temperature. At high temperature, we are introducing partially stabilized zirconia into ceramics. Let us summarize what we have learned. Methods of strengthening of porcelain. It is done by two methods: residual compressive stress introduction, interruption of crack propagation. The introduction of residual compressive stress is done by ion exchange method, thermal tempering, and thermal expansion coefficient mismatch. Ion exchange method, when the porcelain article immersed into molten potassium nitrate solution approximately for 20 to 30 minutes, sodium ions gets exchanged with potassium ions, which are 30% bigger than sodium ions. Then these potassium ions get squeezed into this small little space. Therefore, introduction of residual compressive stresses takes place. Next one is thermal tempering method. Here, either the ceramic article or the porcelain restoration, when it gets introduced into the cool water, it gets rapidly cooled. Rapid cooling causes the introduction of residual compressive stresses, where the outer layer solidification takes place, whereas the inner molten soft inner core is soft molten. This rapid cooling causes introduction of residual compressive stresses. Next, we have learnt about thermal expansion coefficient mismatch, where ceramics and metal, when heated and cooled together, the metal contracts much more than the ceramics. Thus, the contraction of metal introduces residual compressive stresses onto the ceramic surface. This residual compressive stresses are introduced on outer surface of the ceramics. Next, we have studied about interruption of crack propagation, where the dental ceramics, when reinforced with the dispersed phase, it is capable of hiding the crack. This dispersed phase two types. It is done. This interruption of crack propagation done by two methods: dispersion strengthening and the other one transformation toughening. Where dispersion strengthening is the dispersed tough particles, when they absorb energy from crack driving force for propagation. Example, alumina core porcelain, 90 to 95% alumina. Alumina core porcelain contains 90 to 95% alumina. Whereas transformation toughening, here the it in this the change of crystal structure occurs, which absorbs the energy. Example is partially stabilized zirconia gets introduced at high temperature into ceramics. Introduction of partially stabilized zirconia into the ceramics at high temperature. So today we have learned about methods of strengthening of porcelain. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel.